My fellow citizens, at this hour, on my orders, coalition forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war.
The year was 2004. Bush and Cheney's fabricated war on terror was in full swing in Iraq. In May of 2004, in retribution for the U.S. not exchanging captives in Abu Ghraib, an American contractor was beheaded on video in Iraq by masked militia. This was also my first day on the job at CAIR Sacramento Valley, Central California, CAIR-SV CC, and I was sure in for a challenging 2 decades. Less than a year later, in 2005, an FBI informant framed Hamid Hayat in Lodi, California, on baseless charges of providing support to terrorists. CAIR-SV CC jumped on the national radar due to its involvement with the case. In 2006, Hamid Hayat was convicted and sentenced to 24 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. The Muslim community in Sacramento and Central California was traumatized. They witnessed an innocent young man go to prison on baseless charges. During this time, CAIR-SV CC continued to fight for the rights of Muslims, facing undue hardship and persecution under Bush's draconian policies. Tensions were high and Islamophobia was rampant in the U.S. In a Cornell University survey taken 3 years after 9/11, 44% of respondents agreed that some curtailment of civil liberties is necessary for Muslim Americans. The FBI had unchecked power, which they used at their whim. Even high schoolers were questioned over simple doodles. In the case of Munir Rashid, a fourth-generation Palestinian American, a simple doodle of PLO on his notebook resulted in the high schooler being interrogated by the FBI without his parents being notified. CAIR-SV CC, along with its allies at the ACLU and Asian Law Caucus, took swift action to ensure that freedom of speech was protected. These were the days of the Patriot Act. While the war on terror raged on and killed countless innocents, the U.S. and its allies uncovered and arrested the participants of alleged terror plots in North America and the U.K. President Bush commented in 2006 that these arrests were a stark reminder that this nation is at war with Islamic fascists. To which Nihat Awad, executive director of CAIR, responded, "We believe that this is an ill-advised term, and we believe that it is counterproductive to associate Muslims with fascism." Given the climate of Islamophobia, visible Muslims, or those who were perceived as Muslims, were discriminated against frequently. In 2007, CAIR-SV CC teamed up with the Asian Law Caucus and the law firm Minami Tamaki to file a religious discrimination case against a jewelry store that openly admitted to not rehiring a former employee because she wore a hijab or headscarf. The case was settled and justice was served. In 2015, CAIR-SV CC teamed up with the Church State Council and sued the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation for the biggest settlement ever against them. The case was that of Al-Siddiq El-Hindi, a prison guard in the Sacramento region. El-Hindi endured years of discrimination, verbal and emotional abuse, and even endured threats to his safety. Under Trump, a new age of Islamophobia was ushered into the Sacramento Valley region. In 2017, CAIR welcomed a guilty plea of a woman who vandalized a Sacramento area mosque. Unfortunately, more hate cases were coming. CAIR-SV CC, the ACLU, condemned the Supreme Court's upholding of the Muslim ban, a decision that Muslims across the nation knew was motivated by racism and Islamophobia, not safety. The Muslim ban also became the subject of a lawsuit filed by CAIR-SV CC on behalf of a Yemeni mother, Shayma Suela, who was banned from reuniting with her 2-year-old son, Abdullah Hassan. The young child and his father, both U.S. citizens, sought treatment for Abdullah in the U.S. at the UC San Francisco Benioff Hospital in Oakland. When doctors discovered that the baby had a critical and terminal brain condition that would result in Abdullah's death. The mother, a Yemeni citizen, was denied entry into the U.S. after multiple attempts. Thanks to the work of CAIR-SV CC and its partners, Shayma was allowed to be reunited with her son before he passed away. In 2018, the Sacramento community had to come to terms with another loss of a young life, the fatal shooting of Stephon Clark, whose in-laws were respected members of the Muslim community. CAIR-SV CC and our allies led and advocated for police reform in California. Over the years, CAIR-SV CC also stood by our non-Muslim community members as they dealt with civil rights violations, especially the Sikh community. From offering cash awards to info leading to arrests in cases and doing public advocacy for cases including the murder of 2 elderly sick men in Elgrove and the murder of Tracy resident who was brutally stabbed as he took a walk in the local park. In a positive turn of events, one of the organization's shining moments occurred in 2019 when we were part of an effort to free Hamid Hayat. After spending 14 years in prison for a crime he did not commit, the case was overturned and Hamid Hayat was a free man. As CAIR-SV celebrated the return of a community member who had been absent for too long, an uninvited friend came to America, COVID. The community sprung to action, not only to continue its day-to-day work, but also support community members as they faced challenges because of the pandemic, eviction cases, and even food insecurity. In 2021, another case quickly rose in stature, the case of Omar Amin. Omar was an Iraqi refugee who was arrested in 2018 in Sacramento on baseless charges of murder. He was due to be released in 2021, but instead of returning home, he was sent to a holding facility in Southern California to be deported. To date, CAIR-SV has prevented his extradition to Iraq. Now the next step is to secure his freedom, inshallah. In 2023 also marked the beginning of the genocide in Gaza. While Israel's aggressions had been going on since 1948, their amplification in October began what has now resulted in the loss of over 50,000 innocent civilian lives, the majority women and children, and the near elimination of all infrastructure in Gaza. In a landmark case in January of 2024, myself and other plaintiffs took to the stand to testify against President Joe Biden, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin for their role in the U.S. violating domestic and international law and breaching the Genocide Convention, of which our nation is a signatory to. Later, we advocated to get the city of Sacramento to adopt a ceasefire resolution. Despite opposition, a ceasefire resolution was passed after overwhelming advocacy and lobbying of our allies and community. Over the last 20 years, the impact of CAIR-SVCC's work has been tremendous. The organization saved the community over $20 million in legal fees, secured millions of dollars in settlements for community members, secured millions of dollars to community organizations and mosques, and had countless charges dropped against community members, processed thousands of immigration cases, and most valuable, was a lifeline to the community when they needed it the most. Now, as we prepare for the next 20 years, inshallah, we recognize that as our community grows, so too will the demands on CAIR-SVCC. As you supported us for the last 20 years, we ask you to renew your commitment to your advocacy organization, CAIR, Sacramento Valley, Central California.